Imagine a city so rich, so feared, that Rome, the greatest empire on earth, decided that it could not continue to exist. It was not enough to win it. It was necessary to erase it. The sound of swords fell silent more than 2,000 years ago, but the wind that blows through the ruins still carries the echo of horror. Houses turned to ashes. Temples crumbled into dust. Where there was laughter and song, only the smell of smoke and the silence of the dead remained. Such was the fate of Carthage, the jewel of the Mediterranean, the city that dared to challenge Rome's pride. In 146 BC, the legions marched until nothing else pulsated under the African sun. And when they left behind an absence so profound that it seemed like a hole in history itself. But why did Rome do this? Why did such a great empire have to destroy an entire city to feel safe? What would be the limit of human ambition when power speaks louder than reason? Before we continue this story, take a deep breath and think, how many times has power erased something that seemed eternal? If you believe that history is not just the past, but a mirror of the present, leave the like now, because it helps keep alive every voice that Rome tried to silence. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because here every ruin, every battle, and every lost civilization breathes again before your eyes. Comment, "I hear the echo of history," and join the community that makes the past speak again. Before fire consumed its ports and temples, Carthage was a colossus. His name echoed on all sea routes. The sails of their ships streaked the horizon, bringing gold from Iberia, ivory from Africa, and spices from lands that few Romans could even pronounce. In the heart of the city, the market pulsated like a living organism. The smell of fresh olive oil, the noise of blacksmiths, the cries of merchants, all mixed with the singing of temples that revered the Phoenician gods. The houses were built of light stone, the columns decorated with intricate carvings, and the wide streets reflected the power of a people who dominated the sea. Rome, still a rising republic, looked upon this city with a mixture of envy and fear. Carthage wasn't just rich, it was influential, strategic, and most of all, free. But in a world where freedom means threat, Rome began to plan its coup. Carthage was surrounded by walls so high that they seemed to touch the sky, 12 feet of stone, erected as a promise of eternity. Behind them, a diverse and ruthless army. Iberian mercenaries wielded spears, Numidian horsemen dominated the desert, and Libyan sailors knew every current of the Mediterranean. It was a force made up of different peoples, united by gold and glory. In the armory, rows of ships rested like sleeping beasts, ready to dominate the sea. Rome called Carthage the Queen of the West, but behind the respect was fear. Each Carthaginian victory was a reminder that the world had another center of power. Until a name began to echo in the Roman assemblies, Hannibal Barca. With him, Rome saw the impossible happen, entire legions being destroyed, Roman armies humiliated. The pride of the Republic trembled. But the fury of Rome, once awakened, would never go back to sleep. Glory comes at a price, and Carthage began to pay it in gold, blood, and silence. The Punic Wars drained everything that sustained their greatness. The trade that once made the ports vibrate now fell silent in the face of the ashes. The ships were destroyed, the farms razed, and the sea, once an ally, had become a wall of Roman blockades. The people began to feel the weight of the war on the empty tables. Wheat was scarce, salt became a treasure, and fear became the new tax. To maintain the armies, the Carthaginian Senate raised rates, and inflation eroded hope. Gold lost value, currencies disappeared, and confidence collapsed. The smell of the markets changed. The perfume of spices gave way to the stench of smoke and hunger. The streets once full of voices have become corridors of murmurs and broken promises. Rome didn't need to attack, it just had to wait. The city was beginning to die from within. When hunger invades the streets, loyalty evaporates. In Carthage, the crisis has turned into political poison. Wealthy families began to conspire among themselves, exchanging rings for coins and promises. The Senate, once a symbol of unity, has become a field of silent war. Among the names disputed in the corridors, one stood out: Hannibal Barca, the military genius who had once humiliated Rome by crossing the Alps with elephants. But the hero became a threat. Accused of ambition, pursued by his own, Hannibal fled, leaving Carthage without its greatest protector. Rome watched from afar, patiently, like a predator waiting for its wounded prey. Each betrayal was a blow to the invisible walls that supported the city. The enemy was no longer without, but within, and that, Rome knew, was the beginning of the end. The year was 146 BC, the beginning of the end. General Scipio Aemilianus besieged Carthage by land and sea, determined to fulfill the Roman promise: Carthage must be destroyed. For 3 long years, the siege suffocated the city. The walls, which were once pride, were now prisons. Within them, despair spread like a plague. Bread had become a rarity, water a miracle. Mothers exchanged jewelry for a handful of wheat. Hungry soldiers ate boiled leather. When Rome finally advanced, the ground shook under the weight of the legions. The fight lasted 6 days and 6 nights. Carthage burned as men, women, and children fought until their last breath. There was no surrender. There was no forgiveness. At dawn, Rome would throw salt on the ground, a cruel symbol. Nothing should bloom there. Again. Leave your like and comment. What was the most decisive moment of rupture that marked this story? The sky over Carthage was tinged with red, not by the sunset, but by the flames that devoured everything. The roar of the fire drowned out the screams, and the air became thick with ash and pain. The legions advanced like shadows among fiery ruins, crushing what was left of resistance. From the top of the hills, General Scipio Aemilianus watched the hell he had created. They say he cried, who, in the face of glory, saw the reflection of Rome's own destiny. One day, he would have said, "This will happen to us." As temples collapsed and the statues of the gods fell, the entire city seemed to scream against the sky. And then, silence. The fire won. Carthage, the eternal rival, had disappeared. Where once there was a civilization, now only wind, ash, and memory remained. Rome celebrated, but the world became emptier. Carthage had been erased, but its shadow was still alive in the veins of Rome. Roman engineers studied its walls, copied its trade routes, even inherited its agricultural techniques. What Rome destroyed, Rome also absorbed. Centuries later, they would raise a new city from the ashes, Colonia Julia Carthago, the ultimate symbol of historical irony, the empire building its glory on the tomb of the enemy. But there was something that Rome could not master: memory. Poets, travelers, and philosophers would talk about Carthage as if they were talking about a ghost. The name has become synonymous with warning. Absolute power, when it turns against morality itself, creates a void that not even gold can fill. Carthage died in body, but not in soul. And perhaps that was her true revenge, to remain in the memory of those who destroyed her. Today, the ruins of Carthage rest on the edge of the Tunisian Sea, silent, bathed in a sun that doesn't seem to want to set. The waves break on the ancient stones, as if they were still trying to erase the blood that once flowed. Through those streets, tourists walk between broken columns, but few realize what they are stepping on: the ground where an entire civilization has been condemned to oblivion. Roma won, but something was lost with that victory. The purity of his purpose died along with the last cry of Carthage, and in the warm breezes of the Mediterranean, it still seems possible to hear the murmurs of those who have been burned, enslaved, erased. History does not forget. It whispers, it demands. Carthage is the mirror of the destiny of all empires. It is born with pride, grows with power, and dies by pride. What Rome destroyed with iron, time has rebuilt in remembrance. Carthage is not just dust, it is a symbol of the price of glory, arrogance, and thirst for dominance. Where the fire burned, history sprouted. Where salt was thrown, lessons were born. Each empire that raised its sword over another ended up tasting the same bitter taste of the fall. Rome believed it had erased an enemy, but what it really destroyed was part of itself, its humanity. Today, as we look at the horizon of ruins and sea, the question remains: how many more Carthagos must fall for the world to learn the limit of power? If you believe that the past still speaks, subscribe to the channel, share and comment. Which event symbolizes for you the true end of a civilization? The power that destroys also destroys itself.